At 67 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. I was wrong. Dead wrong. My grandson Ethan slipped me a folded note during Thanksgiving dinner last week. His small fingers trembled as he pressed it into my palm under the table. "Grandpa," he whispered, his eyes darting toward the kitchen where his stepmother was arranging pies. "Don't read it now, please." I waited until I got home to my quiet apartment in Riverside. The note was written in a child's careful handwriting. "Grandpa, something is wrong with Mom. She's sick all the time, but the doctors can't find anything. Check the USB drive I hid in your coat pocket. Chelsea has secrets. Please help us." Chelsea, my son-in-law's new wife, the woman who had swept into their lives 18 months ago with her warm smile and endless energy. A pediatric nurse. She had seemed like a godsend after my son-in-law David lost his first wife to cancer 3 years ago. I found the USB drive exactly where Ethan said it would be. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. The first file was a photo of prescription bottles. I squinted at the screen, adjusting my reading glasses. Digitalis. Arsenic compounds labeled as garden supplies. Rat poison. My blood ran cold. The second file was a series of photos showing these same bottles hidden in various places throughout my daughter's house. Behind the water heater, inside a box of tampons in Chelsea's bathroom cabinet, in a shoebox at the back of the master bedroom closet. But it was the third file that made my heart stop. A scanned death certificate for one James Morrison, deceased April 2023. Cause of death: acute heart failure. I clicked on the next file. A marriage certificate. James Morrison and Chelsea Ann Hayes, married June 2019. Chelsea's first husband. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called my daughter. "Maggie? Sweetheart, how are you feeling?" Her voice was weak, tired. "Oh, Dad, not great. I've had another episode. David took me to the ER last night, but they just sent me home again. They ran every test imaginable and found nothing. The doctors think it might be stress or anxiety." "What are your symptoms?" "Nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, irregular heartbeat. It comes and goes, but it's been getting worse over the past 6 months." She paused. "Dad, I'm scared. What if it's something they can't detect? What if I'm dying like David's first wife?" I forced myself to keep my voice steady. "Listen to me, Maggie. I need you to trust me. Don't eat or drink anything that Chelsea prepares for you. Nothing. Tell David you're going on a cleanse or something. I don't care what excuse you use." "Dad, what are you talking about? Chelsea's been amazing. She's the one taking care of me, making special smoothies to help my appetite." "The smoothies. Maggie, stop drinking them. Today. Right now." There was a long silence. "You're scaring me." "Good. Be scared. I'll explain everything soon, but I need to verify something first. Can you and Ethan come to my place tomorrow? Don't tell Chelsea or David where you're going." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the files on the USB drive. A 9-year-old boy had figured out what none of us adults had seen. Chelsea wasn't the angel we thought she was. She was a killer. I spent that night unable to sleep, researching. James Morrison's death had been ruled natural causes. He was only 42. I found his obituary in the Denver Post archives. Loving husband to Chelsea, devoted father to his 2 children from a previous marriage. Wait. Children from a previous marriage. I dug deeper. There was a lawsuit filed by Morrison's ex-wife, claiming Chelsea had isolated James from his children in the months before his death. The case was dismissed due to lack of evidence. The pattern was becoming clear. Chelsea targeted widowers or divorced men with assets and children from previous relationships. She played the role of the devoted wife while slowly poisoning them. After they died, she would collect life insurance and disappear before anyone suspected anything. But why was she targeting Maggie? My daughter wasn't wealthy. Then I remembered. David had taken out a substantial life insurance policy on Maggie 2 years ago when they refinanced the house. $1 million. Chelsea had probably discovered it and saw an opportunity. With Maggie gone, she would have David to herself. along with the insurance payout and the house that was now worth over $600,000 in the current market. The next morning, Maggie arrived at my apartment looking pale and thin. Ethan clung to her hand, his eyes red from crying. "Sit down, both of you," I said, closing the door behind them. I showed them everything on the USB drive. Maggie's face went white as she stared at the photos of poison bottles hidden in her own home. "Ethan," I turned to my grandson, "how did you find all this?" The boy's voice was small but determined. "Chelsea's always on her phone. She never lets anyone touch it, but last week she left it on the counter when she took a shower. I saw she was texting someone about the timeline and symptoms progressing perfectly. It scared me, so I started paying attention. I saw her putting stuff in Mom's smoothies when she thought no one was looking. I took pictures with my iPod. "You're a brave, smart kid," I said, pulling him into a hug. "You saved your mom's life." Maggie was crying now, her hands covering her face. I trusted her. We all did. She's been living in our home, sleeping in the same bed as David, making meals for my son. "We need evidence that will hold up in court," I said. "The photos are good, but we need more. We need to catch her in the act, or find proof she's done this before." I spent the next 3 days playing detective. At my age, most people think you're invisible, which turned out to be an advantage. I drove to Denver and visited the neighborhood where James Morrison had lived. I knocked on doors, claiming to be a distant relative trying to locate old friends of James. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, remembered Chelsea well. "Such a sweet girl," she said, inviting me in for coffee. But something always felt off about her. James changed after they got married. Stopped seeing his kids. Stopped coming to neighborhood barbecues. He got sick so suddenly. 1 month he was fine. The next he was dead. "Did you notice anything unusual before he died?" Mrs. Patterson hesitated. "I probably shouldn't say this, but I saw Chelsea at the pharmacy one day. She was picking up a prescription, and I overheard her arguing with the pharmacist about digitalis. She wanted a higher dose than was prescribed. The pharmacist refused. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed it was for James. Do you remember which pharmacy?" She gave me the name and address. I thanked her and drove straight there. The pharmacist, a woman in her 50s, was initially reluctant to talk. But when I explained that Chelsea might be poisoning my daughter, her expression changed. She pulled up the records. Chelsea Hayes had filled multiple prescriptions for various medications over the past 5 years, all at different pharmacies across Denver. The pattern was there if you knew what to look for. "I can't give you copies of these records without a warrant," the pharmacist said, "but I can tell you that if you go to the police with your concerns, I'll cooperate fully with any investigation." I drove back to Riverside with my heart pounding. I had enough to go to the police, but I worried they wouldn't act fast enough. Maggie's symptoms had been getting worse. If we waited too long, she might end up like James Morrison. That evening, I sat in my apartment and formed a plan. It was risky, maybe even stupid for a man my age, but I couldn't see another way. I called Maggie. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, actually. I haven't had any smoothies since you warned me. The nausea is subsiding." "Good. Now listen carefully. I need you to do something that's going to seem crazy, but trust me. Tomorrow morning, I want you to tell Chelsea you're feeling so much better that you'd like to help her make your special smoothie. Watch everything she does. If she tries to add anything unusual, stop her and act surprised. Say you want to try it before she adds the final ingredients, or make some excuse to prevent her from completing it. Can you do that?" "Dad, what are you planning?" "I'm going to be outside your house with Detective Morrison from the Riverside PD. He's a friend from my Rotary Club. If we can catch Chelsea adding poison to your drink, we'll have grounds for immediate arrest. But if she suspects anything, she might run. What if she hurts me?" "I won't let that happen, sweetheart. I promise." The next morning, at 7:30, I was parked down the street from Maggie's house with Detective Rick Morrison. He had been skeptical when I first called him, but after I showed him everything on the USB drive and told him about my trip to Denver, he agreed to follow up. "If this turns out to be nothing, you're buying me lunch for the next month," Rick said, adjusting his body camera. "And if it turns out to be something, then your grandson deserves a medal." We watched the house through binoculars. At 8:15, I saw movement in the kitchen window. Chelsea was awake, preparing for her usual morning routine. My phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. She's getting out the blender, going to the kitchen now. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched my daughter walk into her own kitchen, acting as normal as possible. Through the window, I could see Chelsea's surprised expression when Maggie offered to help. Everything happened fast. Chelsea reached for her usual ingredients, then casually moved toward the cabinet near the fridge. Maggie said something, and Chelsea laughed, turning her back to add something to the blender. That's when Maggie stepped forward and gently took the blender pitcher from her hands. "I want to try it before you add the protein powder," I heard Maggie say through the phone line she had left open in her pocket. "I'm curious what it tastes like plain." Chelsea's voice was tight. "That's silly, Maggie. You won't like it without the powder. It'll be too bitter." "I don't mind bitter. Hand me a glass." There was a pause. "You know what? I forgot to add the bananas. Let me start over." "No need. This is fine." Maggie poured some of the mixture into a glass. Another pause. Longer this time. "Just the usual greens. Kale can be bitter." "Chelsea, I need to ask you something." Maggie's voice was shaking now, but she pressed on. "What happened to your first husband?" The silence that followed was deafening. Through the binoculars, I saw Chelsea's body language change completely. She took a step back from Maggie. "What are you talking about?" "James Morrison. He died of acute heart failure, didn't he? Just like you're trying to make me die." Chelsea's face transformed. The warm, caring expression vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You're sick, Maggie. You're paranoid. Maybe I should call David." "Call David? So you can tell him his wife is crazy? So he'll have me committed or medicated while you finish the job?" Maggie set down the glass. "My father knows everything. He found the poison bottles. He knows about James. The police are probably already on their way." Chelsea lunged forward, grabbing the glass. "You stupid bitch. You couldn't just die quietly like James did. You had to go snooping." "Go, go, go!" Rick barked into his radio. Rick and I ran toward the front door. It was unlocked. We burst into the kitchen just as Chelsea was trying to force Maggie to drink from the glass. "Police! Let her go!" Rick had his weapon drawn. Chelsea dropped the glass. It shattered on the kitchen floor, green liquid spreading across the tiles. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing hard. Then she smiled. It was the most chilling thing I had ever seen. "You can't prove anything," she said calmly. "It's a smoothie. Maggie's been sick for months. Everyone knows that. The doctors can't find anything wrong with her because there's nothing wrong with her. She's just fragile." "We can prove plenty," Rick said, as two officers moved in to handcuff her. "Starting with the bottles we found this morning during our search of your bathroom cabinet. Digitalis prescribed to 3 different patients, none of them in this household. Arsenic compounds, rat poison, and we have warrants for your pharmacy records from Denver." Chelsea's smile faded. "You're under arrest for attempted murder," Rick continued. "And we'll be reopening the investigation into James Morrison's death. You have the right to remain silent." As they read Chelsea her rights, Ethan ran into the kitchen and threw his arms around Maggie. My daughter held him tight, tears streaming down her face. I walked over and wrapped my arms around both of them. "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now." Later that evening, after the police had finished processing the crime scene and taking statements, the whole family gathered at my apartment. David was there, devastated and guilt-ridden. Ethan sat between his parents on my couch, finally looking like a kid again instead of a terrified little detective. Rick Morrison stopped by to give us an update. The lab fast-tracked the analysis of that smoothie. It contained a lethal dose of digitalis mixed with crushed oleander leaves. If Maggie had consumed the whole thing, she would have been dead within hours. David put his head in his hands. "I brought that monster into our home. I put my family in danger." "You couldn't have known," I said. "She was good at what she did. Professional. She'd probably been doing it for years." Rick nodded. "We've identified at least 3 other suspicious deaths in cities where Chelsea worked as a nurse, 2 widowers and 1 elderly woman. The investigations are ongoing, but we expect more charges. After Rick left, Ethan looked up at me with those serious 9-year-old eyes. Grandpa, how did you know to believe me? All the adults thought Chelsea was nice. I pulled him close. Because I've learned something in my 67 years on this planet. Kids see things adults miss. Adults want to believe the best in people. We make excuses. But kids trust their instincts. You knew something was wrong, and you were brave enough to do something about it. You saved your mom's life, Ethan. Never forget that. Maggie squeezed my hand. You saved my life, Dad. If you hadn't taken Ethan seriously, if you hadn't investigated, if your son hadn't been brave enough to gather evidence and pass it along, I corrected. This was a team effort. 3 months later, I sat in the courtroom gallery as Chelsea Hayes was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. The judge cited her as a danger to society and showed no mercy. Evidence had confirmed she had killed at least 4 people over 7 years. Always the same method. Slow poisoning, disguised as natural illness or heart failure. Maggie had recovered fully. Her strength returned. Her color came back. She looked like my daughter again instead of a ghost. David had gone to therapy to deal with the guilt and trauma. And Ethan? He got a special citation from the Riverside Police Department for bravery and assistance in a criminal investigation. He kept the certificate on his bedroom wall. As for me, I learned something important at 67 years old. You're never too old to fight for your family. You're never too old to trust your instincts. And you're never too old to listen when a child tells you something is wrong. The day Chelsea was sentenced, Ethan and I went out for ice cream. Just the 2 of us. Grandpa, he said, licking his cone. Do you think there are other people like Chelsea out there? Probably, I admitted. But there are also people like you. People who pay attention. He nodded solemnly, then grinned. Does this mean I get to be a detective when I grow up? I laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in months. Kid, you've already got more detective skills than most adults I know. But maybe finish 4th grade first? We sat there in the ice cream shop, grandfather and grandson, survivors of something neither of us should have had to face. But we had faced it together, and we had won. That night, I got a call from Mrs. Patterson in Denver. I saw the news, she said, about Chelsea's arrest. I wanted to thank you for not giving up. James deserved better than what happened to him. His children deserved to know the truth. I had a lot of help, I told her, from a very brave 9-year-old. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and looked at the USB drive Ethan had given me. I would keep it forever. A reminder that evil doesn't always look like evil. Sometimes it wears scrubs and a caring smile. Sometimes it makes healthy smoothies and tucks kids into bed at night. But there's always someone watching. Someone who notices when things don't add up. Someone brave enough to slip a grandfather a note under the Thanksgiving table and whisper, "Please help us." I may be 67, but I learned more in the past few months than in all my previous years combined. I learned that age doesn't make you useless. Experience doesn't make you obsolete. And a grandfather's love is one of the most powerful forces in the world. Chelsea had thought she was clever. She had thought she had everyone fooled. But she had underestimated 2 things: a child's intuition and an old man's determination. That was her fatal mistake. As I turned off my computer and got ready for bed, I thought about all the people out there who might be in Maggie's situation right now. Trusting someone they shouldn't. Being poisoned by someone they love. Getting sicker while doctors find nothing wrong. I thought about calling Rick, suggesting he look into similar patterns in other cities. But that was a project for tomorrow. Tonight, I was just a grandfather who was grateful his family was safe. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Maggie. "Love you, sweetheart. Sleep well tonight." Her response came immediately. "Love you too, Dad. Thank you for believing. Thank you for fighting." I set down the phone and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. My family was safe. Justice had been served. And somewhere in his bed across town, a 9-year-old hero was probably dreaming of ice cream and detective badges. We had won. Evil had lost. And that was all that mattered.